Okay, so today we had a PE2 test fail. PE2 is the parking photo eye for the exit side of the bay. All right, so I've already gone through and figured out what was wrong. But how we do that is in input overrides, because this is a photo eye. It's going to be on the input screen. Unfortunately, I've already turned off the power to the machine, so we're not going to be able to communicate with the PLC. But if you were to put up the screen for the input overrides, you'd be able to see all the photo eyes. I'll come back later in the video and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so again, we had a photo eye go bad, and you'll see these PE test fails. So what it's trying to do at the end of every car is it turns off the emitters for the whole machine, and then it turns them back on. And what it's looking for is for the signal to drop out from the receiver. Because when these things fail, they typically fail in the locked on position. So when it turns off that emitter, the receiver should drop out. And you see all photo eyes clear. They should all be seeing each other, but when they turn off, they should all go off. And so these PE test fails are, they only happen when they turn off and it doesn't turn off for the receiver. So here's an example of what can happen. This one here is totally burned out. The one that we have in the bay, this one's okay. This is the receiver. It says R. The other way you can see if it's a receiver is if it has all these. The emitters are this side, and the emitter just says A or B, and that's it. It also says PE for emitter, and the other one says PE2R for receiver. So what was wrong with this one is the actual connection in here is shorted out. Okay, and the reason I knew that was because I unplugged it. So you could just take these, all right, when they're plugged in, they're gonna have all the lights on them, and they should not, if you unplug it, it should turn off the signal, right? Because what's happening is that one is sending a beam of light across the room, and it's being received by this, okay? And then that is sending the signal back to the PLC to indicate that this is seeing the other eye, okay? That's normal operation. But if this is unplugged, clearly it can't send the signal back to the PLC. So the way you check these is you just unplug them and see if the input goes off. If the input goes off when you unplug this, right, and then you block it and plug it back in and it's still on, then this piece of hardware is bad. There's a switch inside of here that only goes on when it sees the other one. Okay, so if you have it blocked, say you're standing in front of it, what I usually do is I take a box, and I'll show you this again once I turn the power back on. But I'll take a box and I'll just put it over the eye. All right, so now it can't possibly see the other side. So if you put the box over it and it stays on, then you know that it's either the receiver or the cable, all right? And then you just have to go through and see if you unplug it, if it stays on, okay? So again, if these are unplugged, there should be no signal going back to the PLC. If the PLC is still seeing the signal with the eye unplugged, then the end of the cable right here is bad. And I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but when I flex this thing, there's a little hole in the cover. Right there. Do we see that? About midway on the 45 part, there's a hole there, and I'm thinking that the water just got in there through that. These are usually what goes bad. The eyes are usually not what goes bad, but again, if you unplug it and you still have a signal, then it is the cable, not the photo eye. So what I have here is I have it taped up. I have my little rat tail here so I can pull the tape apart real easy, but it's taped around enough to where it's not going to come apart in the chain. The other thing that I noticed is you can't pull it apart with the thing still on there. So there's 2 bolts here that hold this angle on. Just going to take those off so we can get some slack here, and now we can see we can pull those cables right out. So I'm going to pull that cable through, and those cables go up to that small box right there that we're seeing here. That's where they all go. There's four eyes on this arm here. These are the XE eyes, and these are the PE eyes. PE1, PE2, XE1, 2, 3, and 4. So the PEs are the one on the bottom of the thing. So I'll get that taken apart, and then we'll come back when that's taken apart. Okay, so in order to get to that box, we need to move the passenger side arm in towards the middle of the bay, just because the thing is in the way. So you have to turn to manual. All right, and then we're gonna run it on extend for a little bit and then just turn it off, okay? So I had turned the power off so I could cut that wire. To do this portion, you have to turn the power back on. So I just turned the power back on quick to get the arm to move in. All right, so now that that's in, now we can get to the box. Okay, so the box is wide open now, and I have the cable pulled into the chain. This is going to be our new one, and then the other one, the old one, is right here. So we're just going to follow that up into the box here, and then we'll copy the terminations once we get in there. This is the breaker for the petit. You don't want to touch any of those photo eyes without this breaker off. All right, you can short out PLCs, relays. There's no positive to having the power on while messing with this stuff. So the power's off, and now we'll be able to get in there without worrying about wires touching the frame or anything like that. Okay, so this is what the box looks like. It's a little bit of a rat's nest, just because there's a lot of fucking wires in here. So, again, since the power's off, and you can tell, I mean, obviously we turned the breaker off, but these photo eyes need to be off. You never, ever cut something when there's power to it, ever, all right? So, the easiest way to do this is just cut this guy right here, okay? And it'll make sense why we're doing that in a second. So we're just gonna cut this here, all right? Now I confirmed a few times that that was the right one, because obviously you cut the wrong wire. That's really not ideal. So that's pretty tight. I need to get a wrench real quick. So I'm gonna pause this and come back. Okay, so these the small channel locks are ideal for this job. So we just need to get this fitting loose. Okay, put that there. All right. Now, I can't tell you how many times I have forgotten to put this over my wire, and I put the entire thing together, and then I have to take the entire thing apart because I didn't put this fitting on there to compress it, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this wire here and just push it straight up through. All right. So we've got this. Now this is where all of our wires need to land. White wire is not being used, okay? They just have like a shrink wrap thing on there. So we're gonna do something similar. But the first thing that we're gonna do here is put this over top of that. Now I can't really do it while holding the camera, so I'm gonna put that on and I'm gonna get that in the box and then we'll come back. Okay, so since I don't have little shrink wrap things like this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, here's a blue wire nut. Normally I'd use gray, but blue and gray are basically the same thing, right? So I got a blue wire nut and then I have silicone sealant. Now, we normally use dielectric grease, okay? But because I know this is never gonna be used, I wanna just completely seal it in there. So I'm gonna put this sealant into the wire nut here, and then we're gonna cap off this white wire. That's the first thing we're gonna do, just to make sure we don't forget, because the rest of the system will work without it, but if it's not capped, there's the potential for shorting out because of that, and we don't want that. So I'm gonna cap that, and then we'll be back. Okay, so you may already know this, but if you don't, these are Wago terminals, okay? They're Wago blocks. Now, typically, you'd use a Wago stick. I don't have one, but you can use the 1/8 inch Milwaukee screwdriver. It's basically shaped exactly the same. So really, you just want, here, let me see if I can get this. You just want something flat like this that'll go in there, and basically there's just a spring-loaded piece of metal in there that's gonna bite into our wire to give us the connection that we want. All right, so these are pretty tough because this is a small box to work in, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So you see, these all share 24 volt plus and 24 volt minus. All right, so there's four wires in this one. All right, so when I push this in, we're gonna get 4 wires that come out. Okay, so what's important, very important, is we get 4 wires back in. Okay, so you're going to take this. It's a lot harder to do with a camera. Okay, so you see how they're all nicely put in there? They're all even. That's what we need to put back in there. Unfortunately, I cannot do this while holding the camera. So I'm going to get the 1 wire off that we want to take off, and I'm going to put the 1 wire from our new cable that we need to put in, and then we'll put it back in. All right, so we have that nice and evenly twisted together. They're all the same length. So you leave the screwdriver in there, and that's going to keep the pressure off. All right, then we're going to carefully put this back in without allowing any of the threads to get thing, and then you just pull out your Wago stick, and you want to pull on these wires. Now, you don't just want to pull. Let me just get set here. You don't just want to pull on the one on all of them together. You want to pull them individually also, and you want to make sure that every single one of these wires is in there tight. Okay. If you feel anything kind of moving, you need to take the whole thing out and do it again. It's not that big a deal. Take you 2 seconds to do it, but it'll save you so much heartache. Okay, so if we look in here again, see, this is why we cut the thing off and just pulled it up. All right, because now we get to do these one by one safely, and we know that we're getting everything that we need. Let's pull this out of the way. All right, so our blue and our gray are both tied together in there by themselves, which is nice. So we just need to take our blue and gray from here and twist them together and put them in there. So